Welcome to Still Talking with, I am your host, Jacob Fortan. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about the history of Monopoly. Now, why should anybody really care about a kind of outdated game, right? I think the only people who play Monopoly now are people who eat McDonald's. That's the only way people still play Monopoly, because everybody knows that if when you play Monopoly, it's just going to be one of those things where you're just fighting with your family members. And I think that everybody has that really nasty Monopoly, like the last time you played, something horrible happened, like whoever was the bank was a really big dick, or you just couldn't get that property, or just the game was never ending. Well, you know what, let me tell you something. I found out some very interesting things about Monopoly on New Year's Day. We were having a party here at Voltaire. Yeah, that's right, the club there, the exclusive club that we broadcast from. And essentially, it turns out that one of my friends has a copy of the original Monopoly game. This is no joke. This is the Canadian version of the Monopoly game from 1935. 1935. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I geek out for sort of stuff like that, right? Like just original shit. Like the stuff they made in 1935. They made this. I want to show you a piece. Just a piece. This is just, it looks like nothing to most people. These are the rules. These are, there's not a lot that has been manipulated, by the way. There's a couple of, I think somebody wrote a few times on it, like 840. Somebody did some calculations on it when they ran out of paper. But otherwise, even the rules look like one of those old kind of like contracts from the old days. You know what I'm talking about? Like just a really classy choice of fonts, and everything's written really, really intelligently. Like you just get all the rules, which are not the same from the kinds of Monopoly that you've been playing. You've been playing Monopoly all wrong, by the way. So yes, I found this thing, and I was just kind of like just looking at it and be like, oh, well, imagine this was probably produced in kind of like a crazy old printing press, style. This wasn't done like, just the same way that they just produce everything now. Like the pieces are made of wood, and what you're normally accustomed to in the Monopoly pieces, like let's say the little top hat or whatever. There's none of that shit. There's a milk bottle and a fucking cup, or some of them don't actually make any sense, I'll be honest. But yeah. So I looked at this game, and there's a couple of things that struck me. The first one was that copyright was issued in 1935, and I kept on wondering to myself, that's a really long time. That's a really long time. What does that mean, that this copyright was issued then? Well, at least in Canada. I can't speak about the U.S. I did a bit of research. It turns out that copyright expires roughly about 75 years after the death of someone. But if it's not known who the person was that produced it, it's 75 years after the date that it was issued, at least the copyright. That would make this version of Monopoly, that was issued, where that Monopoly guy that you always see, he has a name, by the way. It's Rich Uncle Pennybags. That's his name. And, well, I'm going to talk about him shortly. But there he isn't even on the cover. It's some other dude. He doesn't even have a mustache or whatever. I guess he's just some capitalist. Hey, I'm a capitalist. But what people don't understand, so first of all, Monopoly as a game should probably be more called what it was basically called before 1908, I think, when it was invented, which was called the landlord's game. Because Monopoly is actually about, monopolizing land. And this was meant actually back in the day as a way to try to teach people about this idea that you could charge, or that you should charge this sort of flat tax for land. It's called Georgism. Anyways, it was one of those popular things back in the day when we were still trying to figure out how do you collect money from people, and there were certain debates about income tax, and other people were saying, oh, we should just tax undeveloped land instead that people own. Because the idea was that owning land, or that if you're collecting money for owning that specific amount of land, that has a lot of economic drawbacks, if you want. But these were This was back in the old days where we could still have conversations about what were the best forms of capitalism and how should we design our capitalism, as though we fucking have it all figured out now. You know what I mean? Where things fucking falling apart periodically and be like, oh, it bubbles, bursts, that's normal. What? No, maybe we haven't figured this shit out. Maybe we need to think about it. We're all kind of dumb, and we don't live long enough, it appears, to just learn from our mistakes. But yes, monopoly is just basically about controlling certain bits of land. So that you'll notice that one of the important rules in monopoly is that when you have all three properties, you can charge double the rent. And this, again, is a kind of way to demonstrate people that if you have a monopoly, then all of a sudden, right away, you're just, prices are going to be inflated for everything. Now people run the risk of bankruptcy and so on and so forth. So it was a bit of a lesson. Now, not a very, let's say, capitalist lesson, which is one of those ironies that was banned, in the Soviet Union. No monopoly here. It is anti-communism. This. Actually, no, I wouldn't say that it's anti-communism. I mean, that it's capitalism. I would argue that it's actually the greatest lesson in the predatory nature of monopoly, which is why you must play with the 1935 rules. And I'll explain to you one of the most important rules of all is that normally when you play Monopoly and you land on a piece of property, all right, and you've probably played this in your home version of the game, you have the option of paying for that piece of property if it's not owned at whatever the value that it's displayed at, $60, $120, whatever. If you decline, then immediately the property goes onto auction, and the auction starts at any price. So it'd be like $1. And then someone else could pick up that property for just $1. So it's a wild bidding, kind of like, bidding will start at $1. Do I hear $2 or whatever? Now, you've never played Monopoly where someone's going $1. No, of course not, because you played the boring version where you land on the square and everyone's like, what do we do now? I don't want to buy it. I don't have the money. Or whatever other fucking boring ways. No. You played it all wrong, which is why here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show everybody how Monopoly is going to be played. And how am I going to do this, you ask? Well, in my birthday, which is February 28th, I am going to film me holding a Monopoly party, and it's going to be like one of those old-timey, like, Prohibition-style thingamajiggies at this private club, Voltaire. And that what we're basically going to do is I'm going to divide this into a couple of acts. So first, there's that whole part where all the property has to be bid on. And then after that part is, just done, we'll take a bit of a break, and we're going to have, our producer who's, quite the mixologist here, and he's going to make some old-timey drinks. And that should be a lot of fun, too, because, I'll be talking a lot about the history of Monopoly during this little presentation of mine, also the history of Prohibitionism, and that can, all the interesting things about that era, which I feel kind of apply to nowadays, the Dust Bowl era, the Dirty 30s, the age of the Grapes of Wrath. This is not unlike the time we're living in now. Not at all. So I'd love to see the parallels there. I suppose in our age, the prohibitionism is on different drugs, but the results are still the same. But so we're going to have, that's the first act, and then after that, we're going to go into the second act, which is basically everybody doing their rounds, trying to get their property. And then finally, when things start heating up, when there's only fewer players left, because we're going to have 8 players, and it's going to be a pretty fast-paced game. And then by midnight of February 28th at midnight, then it's going to be, or I guess technically March 1st, we're going to announce the winner, and the winner is going to be whoever has the most money with the property calculated and that kind of stuff. Because there is a quick rule with Monopoly, which is a brilliant idea when you think about it, because how many of you have played until basically you were sick of your family or your friends? That's not a good way to play Monopoly. Again, they had thought of this way back in 1935, how to end Monopoly right. How about you pick a time, right? You don't just sit and dick around. You bid on stuff. And another thing that people can do is you can sell stuff at any time if you want, and you can even sell it if you want through the auction. So if you have 8 other players and you have this one property, why wouldn't you bid on it? And the other thing that's pretty cool too is that there's this one option, I think that it's kind of ignored in modern monopoly, but when you mortgage a property, the bank charges 10% interest on that, which is for however many turns that it's essentially still being leased. And then when a person wants to buy the property, they have to pay the interest on that as well. And the interest part, they don't really include that because I guess math is hard and nobody likes to do math. But goddamn it, we're going to do the math. We are going to do the math. I'm not going to be doing the math because you can't trust me doing the math. We're going to have some math people doing the math. Tommy Boy knows how bad I am at math. I'm just not careful. That's the problem. I understand the theory, but, sitting down, double checking your work. I don't like the detail works. Tom knows. How am I with the details, buddy?
Oh,
not so good?
Details,
Yeah, details. What are those? Details. Like, here's a detail.
Strong point.
This part of my arm is getting a lot of radiation. This part isn't. Details. In a weird world, we have a solution where we have a heater heating this arm too. Well, you might as well be uncomfortable on both sides of your body. That's all I'm thinking. Or no, you put air conditioning, so I'm really cold. Does that even it out? Evens it out. Now, here's a couple of things about Monopoly that I think are interesting. Number one, the Monopoly guy. So I was mentioning his name, Rich Uncle Penny Bags. Well, he's based on somebody. And that person is most likely, although it can't be confirmed, is a man by the name of J.P. Morgan. Now, that sounds familiar. You'd probably be like, is that like the bank? Well, once upon a time, he was a wealthy banker. Yeah, that basically created a monopoly of steel by buying all of these steel companies and eventually giving the largest payment at the time. I don't know if there's been any payment as large to this other guy called Andrew Carnegie, that you're probably also familiar with. Gave him like the equivalent of $6 billion for his steel companies and stuff like that. So he was if you give a guy $6 billion, how much are you worth, right? That's a lot of money. And he was just able to do that. So J.P. Morgan was the rich, the mustache or whatever guy. Do we have a picture? Are we showing the picture right now?
We're showing the angry one, right?
Okay, the angry one. Yeah, no, this one's great, where he's attacking literally a photographer. He doesn't look like a happy guy. I don't see a lot of pictures of him as a happy guy. Not quite as happy as the Monopoly man. But keep this in mind, the Monopoly guy. He's kind of a bad guy, right? Like, the whole point of Monopoly is to bankrupt everybody else. That's how you win, really, if you're playing the long game. You win when you ensure that you are the only one that has all the property, which I guess theoretically you could charge whatever the fuck you want if you want to play with yourself or something. But yeah, you're the bad guy. You're like fucking everyone over. You're the, but here he is smiling, the whole time. In that, funny little top hat. Somebody wore that. It's based on somebody, so somebody wore that ridiculous outfit. Yes, with a flower maybe. Although I don't know, he doesn't look like he's that flowery. But here's my thing. I think that if you had a version of Monopoly, you should actually make the Monopoly guy Andrew Carnegie, because he's a lot more interesting as a historical character. So he gets his $6 billion for essentially creating much more effective ways to smelt steel. So he's kind of like, the Ayn Rand kind of like the steel guy. That'd be like Andrew Carnegie, who uses his inventiveness and intelligence to corner the steel market when it was like the big deal that you could do that. And he sells it for $6 billion. And Andrew Carnegie had an interesting philosophy. His philosophy was that your life should be divided into 3 acts if you want. In the first act, you should educate yourself as much as possible. In the second act, you should make as much money as you possibly can. And in the third act, you should try to give it all away. And I think that's kind of an interesting... Wouldn't that be interesting, sort of in addition to Monopoly? Is not... or at least whatever version, evolution of Monopoly, is not so much that you're trying to make money. That is sort of like a part of the game. But at the end, you'd have to successfully give it all away to charities or whatever that are bullshit or something. You know what I mean? Like, because that's got to be the challenge of like this whole thing. Be like, well, I have $6 billion. Where the fuck do I put this money if I want to do good? Because I'm sure there's as many scammers as there are places that are doing good. Maybe even more scammers. I don't know. There is a huge list of charities that are not, very nice, where they're like, oh yeah, at least 15% of the money goes to where it's needed. Say what? At least? You mean 85? No. No, don't say that. No. Yeah, so some sketchy charities. That would be kind of funny too, like the whole how do you give away money? One of my favorite movies is Brewsters Millions. And this is something that I think they should remake, although it would be difficult to remake because it's probably pretty easy to spend money. Like in the original movie, he has to spend $30 million in $30 million in a month, and he's not allowed to make any money back in return, and he's not allowed to gamble it away. There's a few rules or whatever, and he finds out that it's a lot harder than he could imagine to get rid of money. And then if he gets, if he wins like $300 million, which I guess in the 1980s was just an amazing amount of money. So nowadays you'd have to, adjust it for inflation and then some. So what would be a good amount? What would be an amount that would make a person sick and fucking tired of money that you just had to spend it without making any of it back to make a movie kind of interesting? What would be the amount? Would 300 million be like the kind of thing that you have to spend in order to make like 5 billion? Is that what would you do? Would you just sort of like take the 300 million and be like, fuck off? I don't really need any more in your weird spend it all or get nothing shit. This is weird. It's a weird fucking idea, but it makes a kind of cool movie. So yeah, I think that learning how to give your money away charitably could be one of those important lessons. Maybe that's the whole problem in our society. We developed a Monopoly game, taught everyone how to have monopolies, but then we didn't teach anybody how to do it the Carnegie way. You know what I mean? But let me tell you something. When I say the word J.P. Morgan, a lot of you are going to post-traumatic stress. But if I say Carnegie Hall, you might have some fond memories. And maybe that's the whole thing. If any of those wealthy people out there that gave people heart attacks or panic attacks at the mere mention of their names, I'm like, you're gonna be the dreaded pirate fucking Blackbeard. You realize that? I mean, or you have a chance to be like Carnegie. You're an old man, you already got all your fucking money. Figure out how to just spend it so that you become like this, I don't know, figure, because you can't die with it. And if you give it to your kids, they're just a bunch of morons, and they're going to spend it in some evil way and poison your name. So, really, honestly, I think the solution is to just spend it all away. And we can do that with a game called, there's no name. But yeah, February 28th, well, we're not going to broadcast it live because that doesn't make any sense, but we're going to be filming this. And I'm going to get my 8 volunteers. There's going to be a couple of additions to my Monopoly game, by the way. The bank will not be allowed to be a player. It's kind of like a Glass-Steagall Act, amendment, if you want, of realizing that I think that there's some pretty fucked up things about the bank, also playing and investing. They're the bank. They shouldn't be gambling people's money away. Like I have to tell anybody that thing is just an insanely bad idea. Did we not learn our lesson when we lost a couple $1 trillion, huh, people? Huh? Apparently not. No. No one has done anything to stop this. So the gambling continues. Maybe that's what we need. Fuck this idea of developing the ultimate Monopoly game. You need to develop the ultimate game where you're actually learning about the true nature of capitalism. Because you just learn about monopoly and landlords. Everybody knows how to buy land now. I mean, there's 68% of Americans that are landowners. They get it. They buy land like crazy. They think they're rich, but meanwhile they go into bankruptcy and shit like that. Because they play the Monopoly game. Didn't they get it? You're going to basically get bankrupt, and then your property, your homes are going to be sold for half the value. That's the rule of Monopoly, which I don't know about the U.S., but that's the rule here in Canada. Kind of freaky, right? That a fucking game is the same in real life, and then you're just like, is the whole purpose to get me bankrupt? Yeah, because if I flip your property and I paid you half the value of your house, then I can fucking make some money while you're the one who's left with a debt and shit. Yay, Monopoly. It's going to be a fun game, though. I wouldn't do it in real life. I wouldn't recommend it in real life. I think it would cause a lot of heartache and trouble. But it should make for a hell of a game and a hell of a party. And I'm going to do my best to host it something fierce. And I think that our producer Tommy Boy is going to just be all up in that mixology. Have you thought about some drinks, Mr. B? Do you know what you're going to make? Yeah.
Well, I'd like to do something classical.
Classical.
Maybe, old-fashioned cocktails.
Old-fashioned cocktails.
Prohibition style.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, prohibition style. I like that. So, you guys stay, informed. Stay tuned for more information about that when it comes out. It's actually going to be professionally done, so that's going to be real fun. It's going to be way better than this bullshit. We're still trying to figure out what we're doing, but Monopoly! Woo! And there's a lot more fucked up things actually about the people that Monopoly is inspired from and shit like that you're going to find out in this mad party we have planned. One thing is for sure, though. Never underestimate the ability for a game to teach people things. And, if right now we play dumb, stupid games like Sorry or what is another fucking dumb game? Or Seen It or whatever, and then you wonder why people are dumb. Back in the day, games were a way to keep your fucking mind, alert and learn about things. So there may be still hope for mankind in games. This is what I say. All right, well, we're going to wrap up the show. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody who's tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Leave comments if you have any thoughts, again, on when you'd like this to be, what days of the week you'd like for it to be regularly recurring. We still haven't picked a day. We're just sort of banging these out when we can, but we would love to know what's the best day for a video. What is it, Wednesday, really? Or is it when the week is so difficult to get by? Or is it Thursday when you're just looking forward to the tomorrow? Or Friday when you're just about to sort of like take off for your wild weekend? Or Monday, because there's nothing to look forward to except for this show. Really, I don't know. There's so many possibilities, and we're not doing a show every day. That's not happening. That's not happening. All right, well, with that, my name is Jacob Forte, and I guess I'm done talking. So see you guys later.